Hello everyone, I'm Michaela Kathleen, and in this video, I'm doing a Bookish Razzies. So basically, this is like the opposite of Bookish Oscars. These are going to be some of the worst books that I read in 2022. Although, a lot of these books I do actually still own, and I do actually legitimately enjoy them. There's just only so many books that I read this year, and, you know, gotta pick something to fill up the categories. But jumping right into that first category, we have Worst Actor. And for this category, we have Edward from Twilight. Although I enjoy Twilight, many of the characters are trash. Prince Alexander from Leviathan, which was a DNF, so there just wasn't much that I enjoyed about this book. But the prince was immediately annoying. Razzo from River Secrets. I have In a Burning here, but specifically Razzo from River Secrets, because he actually was kind of my favorite character in a Burning, and one of my favorite characters in the first book, The Goose Girl. But then the third book, which is from Razzo's perspective, I didn't really like Razzo very much, mostly because he just became a kind of boring character once he was the main character. So definitely the most disappointing actor. And finally, Alexander Hamilton from Alex and Eliza. Again, most everything in this book was just kind of poor quality, including a lot of the characterization. But the winner for this category has to be Razzo from In a Burning, but actually from River Secrets, just because it was such a disappointment to have this character that I loved become so boring. So the next category is, of course, Worst Actress, and the nominees are Summer from The Cellar, Claudine from Breathless, Eliza from Alex and Eliza, and Charmaine from House of Many Ways. This is the third book in the Howl's Moving Castle series, and while I quite enjoyed Sophie from Howl's Moving Castle, Charmaine was endlessly annoying. And the winner, or loser, here is Summer from The Cellar. This was just a terrible book all around. I DNF'd this one. She was a terrible character. The next category is Worst Supporting Actor, and the nominees are Peter from House of Many Ways, Henry from Dry. This was actually one of my top books of the year in 2022, but the big exception to my enjoyment of this book was Henry. He was just a weird character that I did not enjoy. James from The Lovely War. He was just incredibly boring. And Jacob from Twilight. I am Team Edward. They both are questionable, but Jacob's the only one who actively assaults Bella, so he is the winner slash loser in this category. He is the worst. So next we have Worst Supporting Actress, and the nominees are Mildred from Fahrenheit 451, Feeny from Let's Talk About Love. She just was kind of a terrible friend and also an annoying character. Claude's mom from Breathless, and Rose from The Cellar. But the worst of the worst here is Feeny from Let's Talk About Love. Again, just a very annoying character. The next category is Least Original Screenplay. So this is just the books that had the most kind of run-of-the-mill plots in my mind. And the nominees are The Cellar, Breathless, Anna and the French Kiss. I actually really enjoy this book. This is a 4-star read for me. I reread it this year and then read the rest of the series, but it is just kind of a very typical romantic YA. And finally, Alex and Eliza, capitalizing on Hamilton. And the winner here is Breathless by Jennifer Niven. This one was a pretty big disappointment for me. I have read Holding Up the Universe and All the Bright Places by Jennifer Niven, and I love both of those, and I was so excited for this one, but this was just a pretty boring beach read. The next category is Worst Adaptation, and here we are judging the movies, not the books. And also, some of these were not bad adaptations. I just haven't read a lot of books this year that are movie adaptations, so only had so many to pick from. But starting off, we have Twilight. This one actually was nominated for Best Adaptation at my Bookish Academy Awards, but it did not win. So next we have Howl's Moving Castle. Again, this is a good adaptation. It was nominated for Best Adaptation in my Bookish Academy Awards. Only had so many to pick from. The next nominee is Fahrenheit 451. This was an interesting adaptation. I watched the movie before reading the book. Cool. I watched the movie before reading the book, and there were some things about the movie I liked better, some things about the book I liked better. Overall, I feel like I liked the movie more than the book. So, you know, spoilers, not gonna be this one. But now finally, the final nominee and the winner, because it was a truly horrendous adaptation, is The Knife of Never Letting Go. I love this book so much, and the movie was so terrible. I kind of knew going in that it probably wasn't going to be a good adaptation, but I still had hope deep in my soul, and it was just so bad. It kind of lost the point of the entire book. The next category is Worst Director, which is basically just Worst Writer. So the first nominee is Natasha Preston. Next we have Stephanie Meyer. The next nominee is Shannon Hale, which I'm sad to include her on this list because she did write one of my top 10 favorite books of all time, Princess Academy, which is just a childhood favorite. But any book that I've read since Princess Academy as a kid, I have either hated the sequels to Princess Academy or just kind of felt meh about, like the Goose Girl series, the Books of Bayern. I did finally decide to DNF this series this year. I read 3 of the 4 books, and they were just so meh that I just didn't want to keep going. And finally, Melissa de la Cruz. And the winner here is Natasha Preston. The Cellar was just terrible. The next category is Best Short Film, which is basically just anything that's not a full novel. And again, I mostly read novels, so I didn't have a lot to choose from here. In fact, I only have 3 nominees for this one. So the first one is Milk and Honey by Ruby Kaur, which I'm just kind of so far in my poetry journey lukewarm towards poetry. I'm giving it a try, but a lot of these were, I felt, pretty basic. So I did enjoy some, and poetry is not super my thing, so. Next I have another poetry collection that comes from this collected works of Lewis Carroll. I have not enjoyed a lot of this because it's very, very old and it's just not my style. And finally, I have Dear Me, Letters to My 16-Year-Old Self, which is just a bunch of famous people writing letters to their 16-year-old selves. And the winner here is the Lewis Carroll poetry. The next category is Best Documentary, which is anything that is nonfiction or historical fiction. And again, don't read a ton from these 2 categories, so not a lot to pick from. But the first nominee is Independent People, which I ended up DNFing this one, but it did have a strange hold on my attention while I was reading it. Next nominee is The Lovely War. This one was a huge disappointment. I expected this one to be a 5-star read. I expected it to become an all-time favorite. I had just the highest expectations for this one, and it was kind of boring. So, biggest disappointment of the year. The next nominee is Bad Feminist, which I enjoyed. It was a little bit more basic than I thought it would be, but I did enjoy it and was glad to have finally gotten around to it. And finally, The Bone Setter's Daughter. And the winner here has to be Lovely War, just because it was such a big disappointment. So the final category is Worst Picture, which is just my least favorite book that I read in 2022. So the nominees are House of Many Ways. This was just a terrible conclusion to the series, I feel. It was so strange and slow, and I did not enjoy it. The next nominee is Independent People. Again, this was one of my DNFs this year, so even though it was kind of strangely interesting at the beginning, it was just such a slow read that I did give up on it, and so here it is. The next nominee is The Cellar, and the final nominee is Leviathan, which was another DNF this year, as well as The Cellar. So 3 of 4 of these were DNFs, but which was the worst DNF of them all? Of course, it was The Cellar. So that was it for my 2022 Razzies. Again, a lot of these books are not books that I genuinely hated, but were ones that just maybe kind of fell more to the bottom of my reading year. I hope you enjoyed watching. Remember, words matter.